Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time, we'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the like and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. We are going to continue talking about the comic book series Civil War. This time we're on the second issue. Although I have read ahead. But
such an overachiever.
We'll only talk about the second issue.
Such an overachiever.
And I know I personally have some things I need to talk about. Issue 2, Civil War.
And 3, I guess. I read 2 and 3. Did you read 3?
Yeah, I'm on like 5 or 6. So in this second issue, it's still sort of like building up. It's like, okay, the Registration Act becomes law, and Captain America is like, they're like this two sides are solidifying, and it's starting to become real. Like, oh, we're not going to resolve this. I have to say my first thought, because it's not, okay, it's Tony Stark as like the driving force behind the people that want the Registration Act to be a thing. But it's kind of like a trio. It's Tony Stark, Dr. Reed Richards, and Hank Pym as like a little trio doing their thing together, planning all this stuff, secret, science experiments and all this stuff.
Yeah, not telling anyone what it is.
It's classified and everything. I just have to say, one of my first thoughts was, why is it that when white men are really smart and really rich, like, why is it always like, I'm gonna build the bomb, I'm gonna build something that's going to destroy democracy, I am going to, like, why is it always that? Why don't we ever think, what good can I do with this?
Like,
or why is their definition of good always something like that? Like, are you all well?
This is where a few people came into defense of Tony when we made that last clip. And they're like, oh, he did this. He donated money to that school. He was giving money to charity. None of which is a structural change. It's literally just like, yeah, let me just throw you some dollars at this charity thing. That's not going to solve anything.
No.
It's not. And people are like, yeah, Tony, he used his suit to fight higher level of crime. I understand that there are other super beings that are not good people in that world. That is not what we're saying. We're simply saying he could be using a lot of other money to solve other problems that do not have anything to do with all powerful beings that he's fighting. That's like an existential threat to society.
All I'll say is, in the first Iron Man movie, Elon Musk had a cameo. And there's a reason.
Yes. For sure. For sure.
And at the time, we thought it was cool, but...
Oh my God. I think about that often, and it's very cringe. Why did we do that, bro?
That is exactly who he's supposed to sort of be. He's supposed to be like the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the da-da-da-da-da. And in the early 2000s, those people were still kind of like culturally cool. Like, they were cool. And now, as we've seen, the decisions that they made as their platforms and influence grew, now we realize that they're not good people. I will say, I do believe Tony Stark genuinely thinks he is doing a good thing. Whereas I think like a Mark Zuckerberg or it's the Amazon man, Bezos. Yeah, like
they
him.
just want to put their stamp on the world.
Yeah, I don't think that they have any real desire to like make the world a better place or anything. I think they're just, I'm super rich and I can do what I want.
Yeah.
And I don't think Tony Stark is necessarily like that, but he has the same blind spots.
What makes Tony Stark flawed in this particular story is his entire motive is very much rooted in, I would say, individualism. And Cap has that issue too. I'll get to a little bit of that later on. But particularly for Tony, what's driving him, very similar in the film, is guilt. that he feels as an individual person. That is what's fueling everything that's happening here for the most part. What happens to that kid, and the mother comes and speaks to him and essentially scolds Tony for all superheroes, right? And then he sort of looks at that as a catalyst for everything that he does. The problem is, as a superhero, to make that kind of decision based off of your own internal guilt, that is a huge level of arrogance to try to make that decision for every single hero for the most part. It even got to the point where, like, yeah, they try to say Spider-Man volunteered. I'm not buying that. Tony clearly was like nudging him, leading him to maybe think that it was his decision in the end, but with a lot of Tony Stark flair and charm and influence over someone. Yeah, he has a lot of
influence over him.
Yeah, like everyone knows that. And so, again, his guilt is not thinking about, I just exposed a lot of superheroes into giving up their personal identity. None of that is really driving him. And I don't actually think, like, I think on the one hand, Tony does want, he wants to make the world safer. I think he wants people to trust superheroes. All of that is true. But at the same time, he also just does not want to feel bad inside anymore.
Also, the question I keep having is, they keep framing it like when when Spider-Man does this publicity stunt and like reveals his true identity, he frames it as like this binary thing of like superheroes can go completely unchecked, or they can like regain the trust of society and register. I feel like there's a middle thing.
Yes.
I'm like, can't you just let them still be independent entities if they want to? Say, sure, some of them can sign up to join the government if they want to. Cool. But can't they still operate as an independent entity, but then like you just hold them accountable when they do things? Like just, okay, if they cause a huge amount of destruction, or if in the effort to save lives they end up costing lives in some way, then they are just held accountable to the law like every other person. I don't understand, because it's like you guys clearly have the tools to do that because you employ them very quickly once the Registration Act goes into effect. So I'm like, why did we skip that? Like, you don't have to do this. This is not the only option.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's like you could just have regulations.
Right. Like
you do for any sort of privatized sector in the economy. Like, no one just has free reign to just do whatever they want.
Right. Like, I just feel like that is like so obvious. Like, I'm reading it, I'm like, are you guys like okay? Like, seriously? like what's going on? Why didn't we at least start there and just see how it goes? And also, I feel like, why didn't anybody suggest that? Like, nobody on Team Cap, like nobody. I'm like, there could be a thing in the middle here. There could be a thing in the middle where we say, hey, you guys are right. That whole thing was a disaster, and we shouldn't just have a bunch of immature, young, untrained people with super abilities out here trying to fight crime for a reality TV show. That's definitely not a good idea.
Yeah.
So we agree that was bad. Let's put in place some structures to discourage that behavior that will hold people accountable in those instances. My other thought was about Patriot. I'm like, yo, I mean, I'm sure the writers did this on purpose. I am just like, wow, so the first hero that you guys take down is a black guy.
Always.
Who is interrupting a robbery. This is the thing, when I reread it, this is the thing that drove me nuts. You guys don't see the irony here? You guys are arresting him for stopping a mugging. Mm-hmm. Did you get the mugger? I really want to know. Did you guys go after the guy that was mugging him? Or did you automatically put all of your focus on catching the black guy who was trying to stop it?
Listen. All I'm going to say is, it is very ironic that the second this law goes into effect, of course, a black person is one of the first people to feel the wrath of this new law. I don't care if fans are like, oh, you're making everything about race. I don't care. It is a fact. When new oppressive laws are introduced in our country, there is always going to be a racial component. And I am very confident that, like, as you said, the writer was like, I'm going to make this a black person that we get to witness it firsthand. Give me a break. Come on.
Especially because, I mean, like, to be fair, it was all the young Avengers that got arrested.
Yes.
But they chose to have Patriot be the one that we are following while they are getting caught.
Very on brand.
It's just very reflective of real life, wherein black men cannot do right in the eyes of the law. It doesn't matter. I just can't believe, I'm like, as you guys were doing this, like, as you guys are in the helicopter, because, like, you know, you kind of get in the dialogue on the guards and stuff that I don't know, are they SHIELD?
Yes.
Okay, so like the SHIELD agents that are, you know, tracking them down and everything. And it's like, you guys are really talking about him like he was committing a crime. Like, that guy was stopping a crime. We don't see how that is what we're doing. Like, we don't understand how that's weird.
This is why the idea of what's lawful or not, it's all just sort of in the hands of whoever makes the rules.
Right. I also want to say, in real life, if a person, like a regular person, saw a robbery happening and interfered to stop it, that would not be a crime. That's not a crime. Like, I mean, maybe if you do too much, like, I guess, you probably get some assault charges or something, probably. But like, okay, vigilantism is a crime. I will say you can't play cop. But like, they didn't go into detail, so I don't know what he was doing. But like
citizens arrest.
There is that for white people, and it's true. Let a black person try citizens arrest. Let a black person try.
Know your limits.
let them try. People are losing their minds over that Alabama thing that happened. The white lady got hit with the chair.
With the chair.
People are real upset.
Yo, that was some real WWE stuff.
I'm gonna tell y'all right now. I don't give a damn.
No.
I do not care about a white woman getting her ass beat. If she's being racist, I don't care.
Racists need to be afraid again. Like,
they need to be afraid.
The other thing that I think I thought of very quickly early on is this comic did an extraordinary job at showing you that when Congress wants to get something passed very quickly, all they need is some marginalized group to place all of their problems on.
The turnaround was nuts.
They said in a few days, the
crazy.
Registration Act was in law. And they had the police force out there in full force in a matter of days.
That is crazy.
Listen, you know it's true. Look, listen, we've seen this happen over and over and over again. Like, we saw it with Clinton's, like, 3 strikes and you're out stuff. Oh my God. Apparently that is still like one of the most bipartisan congressional bill that passed. One of the most in like the last like several decades, because they're like, who's at the face of this? Something we can all get behind very easily. And so when they did that, I was like, oh my God, this is 100% on brand for Congress, like without a doubt.
It's kind of the same. I mean, obviously they didn't do anything with TikTok.
The TikTok thing?
But like the way that they were just like so gung-ho.
Yo, that thing made me want to just like, I almost lost it listening to some of these old people. If you think I'm being ageist, I don't care. But if you don't understand basic necessities in this generation, like you don't understand how Wi-Fi works, but like you're trying to make laws for me, bro, you gotta go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, some of the things that were being said. I also was genuinely confused because I know for a fact that the interns that work for these people and design and okay, I don't know how much research. I'm sure some Congress people maybe do some of their own research, but a lot of the research that goes into prepping these statements is done by like interns, and like those are young people. So I also was kind of like, where, or you know what? I wonder if they did prep it and then the people reading it just really didn't comprehend.
No. I think it was sometimes it is like, I'm going to prep you in terms of when it's something substantive, but if it is spectacle, I do think sometimes it will come top down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because, some of the things that were being said, I was like, this is honestly embarrassing for you.
But even, I remember Jon Stewart made this point where he was like, Congress right now, because if there's so many people that are just old, it's being held together by like a few like young interns and people that are like legislators.
Yeah.
And duct tape. Like, that's the way he described it. Because, like, it's not the senators and congressional people that are writing these laws. It's the people who they hire that probably aren't getting paid a lot anyways.
Or they're not getting paid anything because those internships are unpaid.
Right.
Which is crazy.
And without them, this entire system would fall apart.
That's actually wild when you think about it. Like, there's probably some like 22-year-old kid drafting the legislation right now.
Right.
I don't like that.
I just wrote like 40% of Biden's infrastructure bill, and then he goes handing the pen to freaking Joe Manchin to sign it. Like, I would lose my mind too. Like, give me a break. I'm reading this comic and I'm like, do the Avengers even like the X-Men? Do they even like the mutants? Because there's two things happening here. When Emma Frost mentions to Tony Stark that, where were you when Genosha fell? In my head, I'm like, do you mean to tell me that y'all just watched that happen and like you didn't even try to like intervene? Because as headstrong as you're being right now, Tony, where was all of this smoke when it was happening to mutants on a very violent level? So there's that. But the second thing that I thought was just very interesting is throughout this entire conversation, and we talked a little bit about this last week, throughout this entire conversation, most of the content is about, at least for the superheroes, most of this conversation is, I want to be a superhero with free reign versus I need to be under a governmental structure so that I can sort of be held accountable, and essentially the blame would be placed above me for the most part. That's not the narrative that the X-Men are on.
No.
The X-Men are like, we are trying to survive as a species, as a group of people, as a demographic. It's not just about them wanting to be heroes. It's about them wanting to live.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess theoretically they could just not sign and say, I'm not going to be a superhero.
Yes, but there are going to be mutants that will end up doing a bad thing, like a Sabretooth. Mm-hmm. He's not going to abide by the law.
Right.
And until they're always going to look at the bad actors that just so happen to be mutants as a way to justify the thing that they feel is a threat to their extinction, to their existence, to their domain, to the influence and power they have over society. That's never going to end. And so I feel like Tony isn't realizing for the X-Men, it's not just about who's right between you and Steve. They don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to live. And I feel like the camaraderie that I always feel amongst the X-Men is never present amongst the Avengers. Like, I don't feel the sense of like, yo, I got you because you're my brother, you're my sibling. Like,
no, they're very much coworkers.
Yeah.
Yes, they're very much colleagues.
The vibes are off. The vibes are off. And so like, it's just, Tony, you're just not seeing it from their perspective. And so when you came in here and you were like, they're going to choose either between me or Steve, the arrogance of it. And she's like, nah, we're not doing neither. Yeah. I'm thinking about my people right now, because we know what unchecked power can look like from both perspectives. And when it comes to unchecked power from the government and you give them a military police presence, they nearly wiped us out. What's not clicking for you, bro? Like, they're not going to be the allies that you think you are, but it's the arrogance that he even considered it. Like, I don't know. It's just that I thought was so funny to me. But the second thing, and this is sort of related to Steve, because they started using this language, Cape Killer. As much as I agree with Cap's side, I do think there are some similarities in Cap's, in his worldview and officers in the police force, because majority of Cap's convictions are, if you choose to be a superhero, you've done that in good conscience. And that in and of itself should give you a level of trust and agency from the public, because we believe in ourselves that we would make the right decision. Mm-hmm. That is a very naive way to view the world.
It's also a circular reasoning.
Yes.
Like, trust us because we trust us because
trust us because we know ourselves. Yeah. Right. And I just think, like, someone even said it in the comics. I'm not sure if it was Iron Man, where they were like, this isn't 1945 anymore, which even back then you're showing your blind spot, because black people, even in the 1945s, would have been like, I still wouldn't trust anything like that.
Yeah, no.
That, again, I think was the difference between what Steve is fighting for versus what the
X-Men.
what the mutants are fighting for, right? Steve is fighting for his livelihood, what he thinks is his job here on this earth. The mutants are fighting for their lives, like their life. This is like my existence. Steve could put the shield down and live a normal life, and he would have no problems at all. But there's always going to be some quote unquote caveat for the mutants that will always leave the door open for people to say, we need to get them under control. That's just gonna how it always is for their group. And I feel like, I don't know if Steve is recognizing the flaws even in his perspective, because yes, Tony did something very reckless when it comes to Peter, but you had some of the young Avengers on your team, Steve, and you're also putting them at risk, assuming that, one, yeah, Steve is like a very pure person when it comes to like his morals, but that isn't always the case for a lot of other heroes, you know? And like, there's going to be moments where like they may end up making the questionable decision. And like, even you yourself, you're kind of making like, I don't know, this idea that like there should be no checks and balances when it comes to heroes, and that they should be able to maintain a high level of agency. It does sound very similar to how many officers see their position. You know what I mean? Because once he starts using that term about them being hunted down, all that they're really thinking about is, look what they're doing to us, as opposed to, yes, what's happening to you right now could be done differently, but people have a legitimate reason to want some regulations against heroes. You know what I mean? And I don't think it is a 100% allegory for officers, but I do think Steve is kind of showing a little bit of a blind spot on how he thinks of law and order, and the confidence he has in himself and superheroes to fill that void with no checks and balances. I'm with you, but like, you got to reel in a little bit. just a little bit. So I don't know. I'm intrigued to see where they go with this now, because
yes, you are.
Man, the way that I loved Emma Frost in the comics continues to grow.
They really did her wrong in the movies, and y'all need to fix that.
Yeah, just terrible.
Yeah.
But when Tony goes to visit her and tries to convince her to join his side, and he's also trying to like guilt trip her into not wanting to sign this, and she has this line that stuck with me where she said, "Perhaps we just know what it's like to be persecuted while you're fighting the good fight, Mr. Stark." That line stuck with me, because all Tony kept talking about was approval ratings. Look how many people want this to go down. And I can understand what leads Tony to thinking that, but there are a lot of moments in history when a large percentage of American population wanted to go in a particular direction, and it was the wrong choice. Approval ratings for MLK were terrible. There's a large moment in history where same-sex marriage for gay marriage was something that a lot of people did not want. Obama ran on not wanting that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was not that far ago. When we went to, was it the Holocaust Museum? And you could turn those things and see the statistics.
Well, yeah, people did not want to go to World War II.
No one wanted to get involved.
They did not want to do that.
Bizarre. And so you can't just look what the majority of people are wanting. You have to take a much more holistic approach. What happened in Genosha had to have been something that the government felt confident in doing. Hypothetically, there is a scenario where majority of humans probably did want that to happen.
I will say the one thing about Stark's argument that I do sort of understand is this idea of like, we're accountable to humanity.
Yes.
I do understand that. And so when he's talking about like approval ratings and like, this is what people want, I do sort of understand that mentality of like, we work in service of humanity, and this is what humanity is telling us that they want to do. And so I do, and like we should adhere to that because like what we do for them. So like what are we doing if
they don't want us to do this?
Right. I do sort of understand that.
Yeah. It gets complicated, but I think it comes back to what you were saying. They're working in a very rigid binary approach.
They are. And also, it's about to get really weird. So they kind of lose me completely as it goes
like both
on.
Sides?
No, it's Tony Stark.
Oh,
It gets really fucking weird.
weird.
I was scrolling on TikTok today, having a lovely time, laughing at all the jokes, having a great time.
Uh-huh.
Then I come across this video. Apparently there's a white woman who's had a new invention. Guess what this new invention is? Silk headscarves to sleep in. She said she made that. I wore this on purpose. Because I just want you guys to know. I just really need to understand like that level of audacity. I'm sorry, but there's no way that in the year 2023 you were not aware of bonnets. I cannot believe that. There's no way that you were not aware that they existed.
Bro.
This is not some like, oh, I thought I made it up. My bad. No.
Bro.
That does not make any sense at all. I am truly baffled. I watched the video. I cannot. The reasoning that she gives is like, yeah, now you know your hair can be out of your face and you don't have to worry about like your. I think she says like something about like your skin because like you put a lot of product in your hair and it gets on your pillow and then you lay on your pillow and it can impact your skin, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, we've actually been saying this. Like this is like these are all the same reasons. Like she said like, and it can help my baby hairs grow back in. Da, 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 da. Okay, Susan.
This is why like marginalized groups, particularly Black people, are very protective of things that are within their culture for reasons exactly like this. Because ain't no way she's about to go and claim to be the inventor and make a bunch of money off of it.
Honey, Madam C.J. Walker was doing this in the early 1900s.
Bro.
Listen, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I need white women to find themselves again so that they could leave us alone. I need y'all to do some deep diving.
Oh my gosh.
Some inner work. What do they say? Heal your inner child. Shadow work. All that stuff. Do it all. And leave us alone, please.
Go back to the as ifs.
Please. It's getting out of hand.
Oh my gosh.
I just know that there was a time when like white womanhood was like a real cultural identity. Like it was a very distinct thing. And it was the cool thing too. Mm-hmm. And now I don't know. Man, you guys are lost. I want you guys to reconnect.
This reminds me of a particular white family. I won't say any names. So.
What's crazy is they are finding themselves. They're returning back to their roots. The rest of y'all should too.
After they profited off of trying to
it's
mimic
all bad.
Black
it's all bad.
women.
But maybe in the end it will be good. Maybe in the end they'll set a new cultural norm where white women want to be white women again.
Did you see that DeSantis clip where like he's trying to like force out a smile?
No.
It's the most disturbing thing ever.
Racism robs you of your soul.
Yeah, I think it makes you ugly. Like not just internally, but like outside. You know
if you look at racist people in the eyes, they're dead.
People would take a clip of when he did this weird thing where he like tried to make the smile. And he also did this weird thing where he like licked his lips very subtly, which is like, you look like you're unalive. But they like played it next to like Homelander and it was like very on brand.
No.
Listen, all I gotta say is all of you young conservatives were hyping this man up like crazy.
He has negative charisma.
It is bizarre.
Negative.
Bizarre.
It's gone.
And I'm like, listen, I don't care for Biden. Obviously, like we're both like very progressive in our policies and we were clearly going to vote Biden over Trump But I'm not crazy for Biden.
Although I will say I've kind of been pleasantly surprised at multiple points in his presidency.
Yeah. But for the most part, like I think we would agree we would both prefer someone a little bit younger, a little bit more charismatic.
And more progressive.
Yeah. For a while, y'all had me fooled that I should be terrified of DeSantis if Biden were to run again. Now, I don't know.
He doesn't have the it factor.
He sounds goofy when he tries to talk on the public stage. And what's wild, though, there were a lot of people that were actually trying to tell us this about a year and a half ago when he was on the governor race, where like the charm just wasn't there. And it's easy for him to be a bully on smaller scale.
Yeah.
But now when you're on a stage with like a bunch of other seasoned politicians, you kind of seemed a little insignificant a little bit. Like people, like when Biden was like ahead of everyone and it felt like every one of the Democratic nominees back in 2019 were all trying to throw jabs at Biden. That was a clear sign of who they thought was like the real threat. Same thing in 2015 with Trump. Everyone was trying to throw jabs at him during the primary. No one was throwing jabs at DeSantis. No one took him seriously. Like, maybe a couple of times, but it was just like, bro, you're a loser.
Truly.
Total dweeb.
I feel like they kind of all. I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen a Republican and I was like, you're a charming person.
Maybe Mitt.
I can't remember. The problem is he was running against Obama.
And that boy got cooked.
So it's kind of like standing next to Obama, your charm. It doesn't really matter. And Obama just got the it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
And we're not even talking about like policies and presidency. No. We're just talking like debating.
He just has he has a presence.
Do you ever go back and like watch the 2012 debate?
No, but I'm sure I would love it if I did. I remember I was eating everything
that boy Romney got cooked. Yeah. It was bad.
Because here's the thing. Obama is a black man that he has had to learn how to navigate so many different types of spaces. Mm-hmm. White spaces, rural spaces. And this is before he was in politics, when he was just growing up. Did he live in Kenya? I don't know.
I thought he was in Hawaii.
He was in Hawaii, that's right. But like he's in Ivy League schools, and then he lives in Chicago, the South Side Chicago. Like his code switching game is unmatched. Yeah, there's just he had to master it so well. I just feel like there's very few spaces that he could be in where he wouldn't know how to show up.
Yeah. It's bad.
Yeah, like I would just standing next to him is just gonna be really rough for you. I heard the clip I saw was Nikki Haley, and this is when I started getting worried. Listen, white liberals, you guys concern me. Yeah. Okay. It was a clip of Nikki Haley, and she was where she was like, but also Republicans got us in this mess too. Mm-hmm. And in the comments, people were like, wow, Republican making sense. The mess that she's referring to, though, I'm like, this was not a mess. She's like, they are the ones that basically like all the COVID relief stuff. Mm-hmm. They are the ones that I'm like, and then she starts talking about like all these people on that they put on food stamps and all these people on Medicare, and I'm like,
dog whistle.
These are actually not bad things. She's not making sense. She's blaming Republicans for the things that they did that we actually benefited from.
Yes.
This is why, listen, white Republicans, I mean, not white Republicans, white liberals.
This is the thing, man. Listen, you don't want to call yourself a liberal, because I think what we saw over the last 8 years, I think white liberals do not want to see progressive policies. I think they just hated Trump.
They just really hated Trump. And I'm like, I need you guys to understand, all Republican is bad. It's
Name me one policy right now in this day and age that would benefit Americans.
I told you about that podcast I was listening to with people that are self-prescribed I keep saying Republicans. Self-prescribed liberals. And they were talking about if anybody could overcome Trump on the Republican primaries, who would it be? And they were all saying stuff like, I was hopeful for DeSantis. I was hopeful. I'm like, I'm sorry, but for me, a DeSantis is just as big a threat as a Trump.
Yeah.
Do you see what that guy's doing down there?
Do you not think he wouldn't try a January 6th? Are you that naive?
It's like January 6th. Also, that guy's down there. Like the stuff he's doing with Florida schools is crazy.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, it's all very bad. Like, yeah, they put a little bit of a polish on it because they're not as brash as Donald Trump. But when you listen to the things they say, it's all very bad.
Just as trash.
Everything about it is bad. It doesn't, to me personally, I don't really care which one of them wins. It's all bad.
All right, y'all. With that, thank you so much for tuning in. Peace out.
Bye.